That's really strange. No copyright ID. Alright, let's try this again then. This episode stars with Twilight preparing to reshelve her library. It's a nice homage to The Sorcerer's Apprentice, but it gets interrupted by Spike laughing. Oh yeah, this is a Spike episode, isn't it? Give me a minute. Alright, I'm ready. Spike was laughing because he has a special gemstone that's a birthday present to himself. It's a fire ruby, and apparently you can age them like cheese or wine. Rarity comes over and notices his gem, and immediately begins fawning over it. Yes, she does have a reason to be here. She was looking for a book on historical fashion, so no complaints from me. Until this happens.
I've never seen anything quite so stunning before. Like it? It's magnificent.
Did she just try to seduce the gem away from Spike? After the fact, Emily Larson stated that this was all from Spike's point of view, and Rarity's thanks, a kiss on the cheek, do give clues to it, but you've got to be more clear on stuff like this. But I can't be too mad at this because she never outright asks for it, and sometimes it can be hard to hide mannerisms. Spike is so overjoyed by this that he claims that he'll never wash his cheek again. And he was actually serious. Twilight manages to clean it just before Spike's birthday party. All the main six come over and provide Spike with gifts, much to his surprise.
Don't you know you get presents on your birthday?
Well, actually, this is my first birthday in Ponyville. I usually just get one present from Twilight. A book.
So she does care. Rarity shows off how grateful she is for the fire ruby, and then we see that Spike has been enjoying his party a lot, and is grateful for everything. Pinkie lets it out that Spike has a special cake at Sugar Cube Corner, and so he rushes towards it. This is a sapphire cupcake, and it makes me curious as to who would come up with a recipe like that. Spike is distracted by this, and so he bumps into Cheerilee. While helping her pick up her spilled groceries, he tells her that it's his birthday, and Cheerilee gives him a hat. Who picks up a hat while grocery shopping?
Every pony should get fun gifts on their birthday.
I hope she realizes what she's just done. This little statement gives him the idea to start mentioning his birthday to random ponies, and he begins taking their stuff, until Twilight stops him from nearly robbing some pony. She scolds him, but it doesn't seem to convince him to stop. And yes, that is very creepy. The next morning, Twilight finds Spike in a pile of callbacks to previous episodes. She moves the stuff to find that Spike has grown in his sleep, and apparently he has sparkle vision, which pretty much gives him the desire to steal and hoard shit. Also, his voice is deeper. The implications are impossible to ignore now. Spike has hit some kind of puberty, and I suppose now is a good time to explain specifically why I don't like Spike episodes. It's not that I don't like him, because I do. Hell, it's not even that most of his episodes are of extremely poor quality. It's the fact that they keep throwing uncomfortable ideas at us and never really explain them either. After visits to a doctor and a vet, Twilight takes Spike to Sakura, who explains that dragons grow with greed, and the more they grow, the more greedy they get. Let's explore a fraction of the questions I have now. Is this the only way that Spike grows, or is it just a sped up process? If he never got anything, would he stay a baby dragon forever? Speaking of that, what happens when the main six eventually expire and Spike is left on his own? Emily Larson, you may not have brought these ideas up, but you put them to the forefront of the episode. And I'm not the only one having these questions either. Twilight steals a broom in the town square and uses it to lure Spike back to the library. And then she traps him in her spare room, which has glass windows. He doesn't escape though. Instead he gathers up a hoard of books and perches on top of them. It's only when Twilight removes the books that Spike escapes, through the wooden wall. Twilight runs to Applejack for help, who is currently missing her apples, and her leaves. Applejack laughs at the suggestion that it's Spike who's destroying everything, until Spike runs by holding her stuff. Applejack and Twilight try to tie Spike up, but only manage to get themselves tied to a tree. Rainbow comes by, and of course has a bit of a laugh. That is until Fluttershy lets out a scream. Oh yeah, she's afraid of grown dragons, isn't she? They come to her and find her hiding in a huge tree. All Spike did though was steal her chicken coop and run. Next is Pinkie's scream. They go to Sugar Cube Corner to find Pinkie throwing cakes at him. After Spike takes a bunch of cakes, he grows again. Here's another question. How big can Spike get? Is there a limit or something?
Completely out of control. Who knows where he'll go next?
Considering we've got all the main six together except Rarity, I think I do. Yeah, Spike kidnaps Rarity and an air raid siren goes off. Spike is busy destroying the town. He removes the water tower to hold all of his shit, and a flood washes the ponies away. To think that all of this destruction wouldn't have happened if ponies weren't nice to Spike. Fluttershy and Rainbow Dash try to talk Spike down. It doesn't work, and they get tied up in Rarity's cape and fall into the water. Next at the bat is the Wonderbolts, so they actually do have a purpose. They try to fight Spike, but seem to be nothing more than a minor annoyance. Spike sees the cave from Dragonshy and heads towards it. When the Wonderbolts get to be too much of a nuisance, he traps them in the water tower. I'm beginning to think that M.A. Larson doesn't like the Wonderbolts too much, since this is the second episode of his where they have suffered a humiliating defeat. Rarity tries to scold Spike, and in doing so accidentally reveals the Fire Ruby. He wants it, but Rarity will not let him have it since it was a gift from the Spike she remembers. The scolding in the gem reminds Spike of his previous generosity, and he turns back to normal and causes them to plummet. Question 45. Can something like this happen with any dragon? As they fall, Spike tries to confess his crush to Rarity, but she doesn't need to hear it. And yes, it is very heartwarming. Luckily, Rainbow Dash and Fluttershy manage to save them, and every pony is happy, except for the Wonderbolts who are quivering in the corner. Why do you want to be one of them? Spike glances over the destruction he caused, and is obviously really guilty about it, but Rarity comes around and says that she's proud of him, and that seems to stop him from feeling so bad about himself. Am I looking too deeply into this? You'll tell me if I'm looking too deeply into this, right? I did a lot of complaining throughout this episode, mostly with all of the uncomfortable questions that were raised, most of them with the inevitable situation of Spike growing up. And there were plenty of questions that weren't answered. Is this the only way that Spike can grow up, or is he going to stay a baby dragon forever? And neither of those situations is exactly a happy possibility. Even with all these questions, this is probably the best Spike episode. I'll put it this way, this episode does a lot more than it doesn't do. It had a brilliantly set up plot, and there were a lot of jokes that hit home, especially with Pinky's surprised face. Most importantly, this episode had plenty of heart, but the questions, they're there, and so the best I can give this episode is a silver rating. Just, to the writers, try not to bring up questions that you aren't willing or able to answer. By the way, I'm going to be reviewing the episodes in broadcast order, so next up is Hearthwarming Eve.